Hey everybody, it's been a minute. I sort of apologize for it having been a minute. The last time I was here would have been May. So in the period since, it's now, as I'm recording this, it's the afternoon of August 7th. So we're talking 2 months, maybe 10 weeks, it's been a bit. So two things. Let's do this. Let me give you a brief housekeeping so you understand where things are at. Maybe just a little bit of, some people might be seeing this for the first time and go, well, what is this about? Let me give you a little, maybe it's time for a brief reintroduction of what the heck is going on here, because these things do redefine themselves as time goes by. And then we'll dive into, what I've been noticing, and it's been an interesting period of time. Okay. Housekeeping piece goes like this. I have a son. I have one child, my one and only, and he's 18 and he just graduated from high school. So, as you can probably imagine, that is a very busy time period. I've obviously never done it, and he doesn't have a lot of cousins and so forth that have gone through it recently. Though there wasn't a lot of playbook. And I guess the thing about it too is he's look, I'm a musician composer kind of guy, and he is a film and graphic design and film editing, and he's in that world. And in a lot of ways, the species aren't all that different. He's very, he's not a social guy. Perfectly happy to talk to you, but he's not an outgoingly social guy. And understanding that about him has been part of, the whole experience. Just understanding who you got and that this is the way someone's built and so forth. And so while we were going through graduation, which is social by any stretch, he also got asked to the local high school's version of the prom. My guy would never go. My guy doesn't generally go to these sorts of, never did. But young lady asked him to go. And now he's like, wow, I don't know. And he comes to me, what should I do? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I was similar to him. And I never wanted to go to those events, and I got asked. And I went, and I probably could have been a little easier about it, but I went. And it was okay. And then a year later, I was dating her, so I was definitely going. But I was like, you know what? The only thing, my advice to him was, okay, if you're going to do this, you get these opportunities once. And it is, I didn't want him to turn, a lot of people blow this stuff into the biggest event ever. And I want to be balanced with that. And that's how I wanted to approach it. I mean, you probably get a chance to go through that springtime of your, you do it once. So while I don't think it's the be all and end all, it's also a milestone, and it is significant. And that significance shouldn't be, you don't want to downplay the fact that that is a real thing. So I said, when are you ever going to get a chance to do this again? And he's like, but I said, if you go, I would say if you go, don't do it halfway. Either if you can't commit to it and go, then don't go. He's like, so he thought about it, and which is very typical of him. He didn't give me, the vest is on very tightly. He's not going to reveal anything. And then he said, okay, I'm going. Okay, fair enough. And he goes, yeah, I want to look sharp. I'm like, okay, do they do tuxes? No, they do suits. Okay. And he goes, and the tie has to match her dress. Okay. And so we got all into getting all that down. And he ended up having a very good experience. It was great. I don't think the young lady in question was at all interested in him. He was, I think the idea, he entertained the thought, but this was I need a date, which is fine. So, but he ended up. Turned out to be, for a guy who's not social, those first kind of social things, if they go well, can have some impact. So it was very good that he went out and he did this, and it was great. All right. And then we went through all the graduation and, graduation parties and all sorts of stuff. Fine. When that was all over, without much time to spare, we had asked him, do you want anything for your graduation? Well, he wanted to go away. He wanted to go to Iceland. He'd been to Iceland when he was 10. We were in Iceland in 2016. So he wanted to go back and see it with more adult eyes and really go to some of those places. So we went to Iceland and spent a good week on basically the south coast from Reykjavik through Vik and then all the way over to Hup, and then maybe just a little beyond the Stockness Peninsula and so forth. It is one of my favorite places in the world. And we had a bunch of adventures and did things and went places. And him and I took some hikes and it was an incredible trip. Okay, so that took up a lot of time. Fair enough. And when we get back, there's really not much time because we're pivoting hard to get ready for college. He's going to be at Syracuse this fall, which is he's going to do the Newhouse School for Communications, which is in his field it's top school. It was his number one program, and he got in. So someday we'll talk about helping your kid get into colleges and seeing colleges and that whole experience. If that's something someone would want to see, we could certainly discuss it. It was fascinating. I learned a lot myself, but I think he's found the right place. But he's going to be there in another week because they want them getting used to living there, and then they'll start classes and so forth. So we're registering for classes, and we're everything that you can get for a dorm room, and you can imagine it's involved, and it's not the same experience that I went through or my wife went through. In some ways, surprisingly, not all that different. So we're not totally adrift and lost helping him with this. Enough remains the same. Obviously, lots of new conveniences. Anyway, so that's taken up. Been busy. So all of that's been going on. Now, let's try to pivot to why I'm here today. Or let's do that, what I was saying before. For those of you who are new here, let's go with that. I'm not into being scripted, and I'm not into lots of fast cuts. I think there's something for someone being able to, if you have the gift for gab, for being able to extemporaneously burn for 20 minutes or 30 or whatever it is. And some people obviously, look, there is every kind of way of doing these things out there, right? I mean, podcasts will tell you that. And I think it took me a while to get my head around the idea that podcasts were basically not much different from talk radio, except now they were on your phone and you could program when you were going to listen to them. But in a lot of ways, it's still somebody talking to you. And I think there's still a place for that. Podcasts don't have to be interviews. A lot of them are interviews, or conversations. And it's fine. But I was a person who loved talk radio when it was a human, a voice talking to you. Now radio obviously has that kind of magic, but I think from a functional purpose, it's really not that different for someone to have me in your room or so and say, okay, let's chat about something for a while, or I've got something I want to tell you, and I'm going to get into it for a bit. I think it's fine. Anyway, it would be no different than if you went to a lecture or something. I'm not comparing myself to those sort of folks. What I'm comparing is the experience of hearing something and taking some information in, or just simply a perspective. And the perspective that I try to zero in on here, really, I think this is about cultural critique. I think it's about I'm a musician and a composer, and okay, So I have a particular slant way of seeing the universe, but I also always try to keep one foot in what I think is the regular world. So I could talk about all sorts of different things, but generally it's going to be things that are happening in the here and now, and what it pretends and so forth. And this kind of all dovetails to where I want to go with this today, because while I was taking care of my kid, and then just prior to Iceland, and then during Iceland, and after Iceland, boy, it got very busy in a news sense. Now, I am a news hound, and I have been pretty much since I was 10. And also I love following politics. It's been harder to follow it's been not a pleasant thing to follow in the past, 10, you can argue much longer, number of years. But I have an interest in it, and I have an interest in in the way that we get our information, which has changed and continues to change and is in flux, and all the discussion about that and around that. So obviously a lot happened. With a lot happening, but here's I think maybe the key point is, it's one thing to try to stay informed, but a lot of the information that we get these days, a lot of what comes under the heading of news, really isn't terribly about news. It's about prognostication. A lot of our news turns out to be people telling us what's going to happen next, which obviously nobody can know. So there's almost all the evening cable news is our opinion, and almost exclusively political opinion shows. That's all that's going on. There isn't news. And you say, well, that's been like that for a long time. It has been that way for a long time, and it hasn't been terribly great. There was a time we've been better informed before. Now, before anyone, I know sometimes I'm the wrong person to make certain arguments, because they're going to say, oh, you're a boomer, or you're this, or you're talking down to younger people. I want to be very clear. One, I'm not a boomer, I'm Generation X, so there's that. The other one is, though, that I think every one of us, and I did this, there was nothing wrong with learning from people, or learning about periods of time before me. I was born in the 60s, but I felt very incumbent growing up in the 70s and 80s to know about the 50s and the 40s and the 30s, because the 50s and the 40s and the 30s and the 20s and all of that, all the lead up to my life was very important to understand, so that, you can't build a building on the 35th floor. I mean, you got to know. Now, you could go back forever, obviously, and I love history. So when I was a kid, I was reading every history book you can imagine, because I wanted to know as much as possible all the stuff that had come before. What more could I know? But particularly with, things more recent, I wanted to know what had happened before, and one of the things I found is you could get great lessons. We're such prisoners of the moment, particularly these days. If it didn't happen last week, it never happened. And I realized there were a lot of really, really bright people that came in decades before I was alive, saying some really, really profound stuff. And it was incumbent upon me to take that stuff in. Now, some of it might hold up and some of it might not, but it was still, I felt I should know that stuff. And sometimes some areas were better, and then other areas were worse. Again, it's this prisoner of the moment sort of ties in with the idea that whatever happened last week is the greatest thing that ever happened, because we don't remember what happened 10 days ago. And it's anti-intellectual, and it's just plain dumb, and we do it a lot. So I'm not trying to say, well, back in my day it was so much better. Not necessarily. A lot of things were much worse. Some things have improved, other things haven't. And some things have gone backward. And I think virtually any generation could say that. It's interesting sometimes and surprising which things have and the way they have. But when it comes to news, there was a time when you could get really good reporting all over the world. And CNN when it was really good, which goes back a long ways at this point. But when, there was a time when they had reporters everywhere and you could get news every place. The only thing like it really today, or even close to it, or even trying to be like it, is really the BBC, where you'll get, at least in the English language, where you'll get, they've got people all over the world telling you what's going on. Not telling you what's going to happen, telling you what has happened. Another interesting aspect of what we're living in today is, as that has gone away, Twitter took over. And Twitter was a great breaking news place. And we've lost Twitter because, Musk has decided, I think is in essence, to take a piece off the chessboard and redefine, no, we're all about free speech. And then it becomes, he's to him, free speech apparently means, disinformation is free speech too. Okay, I think we had it settled that it's not okay to, right, Oliver Wendell Holmes, it's not okay to yell fire in a crowded movie house, right? And apparently Musk would say, no, it's perfectly fine. Oh, okay. No, there can't be libel laws, right? Of course, it gets a little, it's not a good faith argument. And that it's not a good faith argument. So we've lost that ability. So it's harder in a lot of ways to get good reporting. You have to work on it harder. Now, with that in mind, I'm not on Twitter anymore. I'm now on Threads. And there are pros and cons to it, but I think it's an improvement over Twitter. Anyway, a lot happened, right? Let's go politics. So I was going to support Biden because I didn't feel there was a choice. I have always been to the left. I am not a Democrat because the Democrats do all sorts of things that bother me. They never seem to fight hard enough. And they often are not liberal enough for me. Now, you said, you're way beyond Bernie and you're a communist or something. No, I like capitalism and I like money very much. I'm closer to social democrat with the European version of social democrat to probably anything that we have here. There are times when I think the left goes, a little far, even from me. They seem to not go far in the areas I want them to go in, and too far in areas where I don't think it's helpful. So and they don't go to war and want to win, and I'm like, I want to fight and fight hard against what I see on the right, which I feel is very dangerous. Now, I've always been this way. I was, my first election was 1984. Me and about, I think, 7 other people voted for Walter Mondale. I am, I'll go with them because I don't have a heck of a lot of choice. But very rarely have they ever put up candidates that I necessarily were my first pick or somebody I liked. And Joe Biden, and, I never was crazy about Joe Biden, who I always thought was kind of too middle of the road for me. Nothing exciting there, but hey, listen, I got behind him last time. I didn't think he was the right choice, but I got behind him anyhow. In 2020, my candidate was Kamala Harris. Okay, so but I was going to get behind Biden again, but I could see that there's some serious problems here, and I thought he should not have been run, and I was wondering. What I didn't seem to understand is that the Democrats, to the degree to which those in the party really didn't seem to understand that people don't like him. And I understand that, when you're trying to get elected, people liking you is, he's the greatest president that has ever been. He's the greatest president of my lifetime. He's gotten some legislation passed and he has been competent and he has hired generally good people, Merrick Garland being an exception. But I mean, he's done okay, but he's also never pushed back hard enough against the right. And he's been okay, but he's nothing been fantastic. And his approval ratings, since basically 6 months after the inauguration, have been hovered in the 40s. People very quickly decided they didn't like him. Period. Doesn't matter. You're not going to come, we've got the stats here, and we're going to show you. people don't care. Voting is very visceral. They have to like him. And they sit there and go, he's losing his fastball. Okay. Now we're gonna hit. I got accused of ageism a few times by my friends on the left. Look, no one thinks that people should be discriminated against per se due to age. If you've still got it and you're still competent, then I don't have a problem with older people doing all sorts of things. But I do think there's a limit to it. Nuclear submarine commanders. There's a maximum age for them, isn't there? Right? I mean, there aren't any 78-year-old guys, deep undersea running nuclear subs. Because there comes a point where you can't do the job anymore. They take the keys away from you. They're holding the Olympics right now, right? I mean, yes, athletics could continue and you could stay in shape, but there are physical limitations eventually to what we can do. If that affects our body, and it does eventually affect the brain, and there does come a point where people need to retire and move on. Until we get the magic chip and, we get rid of age, and I sure hope they do. But until then, we're still operating at least now. We may not be in 20 or 30 years, but we are now operating within a space where, there's going to come a point where, Dianne Feinstein should have retired. RBG should have retired. Didn't want to be replaced by Obama for some reason. Okay. But I mean, there comes a point. Now, I was watching very carefully because I was like, if Biden could just be strong enough, long enough, maybe as we get into the fall, people will start to get serious and things will start to turn. But it wasn't looking great. So I watched State of the Union, and I thought he did a great job. He did a really good job. I was surprised. I was like, oh, this could be bad. And then he was great. So I was buoyed. And then the debate happened. And I was that night, within 10 minutes, going, he's screwed. It was so bad, it ends political campaigns. Now we get into the interesting parts. Because tons of people within the Democratic Party were like, well, he's our guy and we're sticking with him. And there was talk, the next day, he was great the next day. He had one bad night. Next day, he was on a teleprompter. He couldn't do it. It was more than one bad night. I think a lot of people close to him knew it. But they were going to push anyway. There were I know people who are pretty deep inside the Democrats. And telling me, Dave, you don't know how it works. And you can't just turn things over and you can't just switch to another candidate. There's all these problems they'll have within the party. They've had primaries and it cannot be done. It can't be done. The mechanics of it won't allow it to be done. If you think it's easy, it just isn't. It doesn't work like that. There's a lot of that. And I'm of the opinion that if there's political will, anything can be done. It can be done fast. It can be done in a week and a half. It can be done. You can do anything. You really can. There isn't a lot of it can't be done in human affairs. If you want to do it, you can do it. So I was like, didn't really ring true. So I was watching all that go down. And while I was watching that go down and having a lot of conversations with people on Threads, I was paying very close attention to what was going on in France, meaning the French elections. And the right wing is back again, and the right wing is making a run. And then I saw all the leftist parties come together and push back, and the right didn't win in France. And then I was like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens in England. Now, there are plenty of folks who say what's going on over there has nothing to do with what's going on over here. I recognize that, but you know, it's also true that in 2016, Brexit happened. And it was almost a predictor of what was going to happen here. A lot of folks think it was a predictor of what happened here. There was, you know, to some degree, the West is connected, meaning the Europe-U.S. axis. So I was pretty sure that Labour was going to win in England and probably win pretty big. And it all happened on July 4th, which was perfect because that was the day I was leaving for Iceland. Perfect day to leave America. I was just like, I got to get out of here. And, you know, so the Democrats couldn't get their act together. And Biden was in free fall in the polls. And it was like, okay, this is a moment where it's over. You never recover from it. They'll never recover from it. And this is getting really scary. Because there's a lot of reasons to still be very worried, but really scary. And I got on my plane to go to Iceland, but I kept an a watch on English elections. And English elections couldn't have gone better. That was great. And it's finally, you know, to some degree, finally turning the corner of 8 years because of Brexit. So they've got a lot of problems there. And they continue to have a lot of problems even now. Now they're having all sorts of riots because that's how far the right wing, that's how threatened they are, and that's how ugly this is going to get. There and in other places, probably here too. Okay. So I went and did my vacation. I did not worry about the United States. I tried not to worry about the United States. Came back and it's continued to be, you know, the implosion continued to be happening. And, you know, there was talk, you know, they've got to make a change here, and everyone's like, well, it wouldn't be any better, the polls wouldn't change. And I'm like, boy, I don't know. I think it's as simple as they aren't crazy about Biden. Now, this is where I think it's important to start thinking about prognostication. So much of the news is prognostication. How often do they get it right? You know, if you want to make your news sources successful for you, then I think it's a big deal to keep score of who is right and who is not right, especially at critical moments. And by say getting it right and getting it wrong, well, you know, Kramer on CNBC always gets it wrong. I don't know when he's ever been right. This guy somehow still has a gig. Chris Salitza on CNN, never right about anything. So there are guys who get it wrong. The guys who get it right probably get it right. The best prognosticators, you know, it's all turning into betting markets, but the best prognosticators are usually around 68%, maybe closer to 70, 72 if they're really on a roll, on a heater. But that's as good as it's going to get. You know, people want badly to feel that they know what the future is going to be, and you're not going to know. So coming to grips with that is very hard for people. That's why authoritarian leaders who say, this is the way it will be, I know the truth, and all you have to do, makes it very simple. All that anxiety is gone, just trust that, and you don't have to think, right? Democracy requires thinking and making these predictions and realizing you're going to sometimes get them wrong. So I was watching all of this, and I'm watching who's predicting what. And then the dominoes start to fall. And it started to fall with George Clooney. Clooney coming out, and people didn't want him to do it, saying, you got to make a move here. And a few days after, it's Adam Schiff. And then I see a split within the Democrats, where a number of them are, you traitor. Adam Schiff? I mean, you know, so I'm watching this happen. Now this is the week off. And I'm watching this go down, and I'm like, oh, the conversations in the background, It got to be amazing. And it's like Biden's not going. He ain't going to do it. And his campaign people are saying he ain't going. Hakeem Jeffries is saying he ain't going. Although I know Jeffries is probably involved in getting him out. I'm not sure I'm crazy about Jeffries. He didn't perform well in this situation. And then I realized Nancy Pelosi's involved. I'm not a Nancy Pelosi fan. I think Nancy cares about one thing, Nancy, and about control. And I mean, half the time she was not exactly helpful to Obama. I think it was almost jealousy. Not crazy about Nancy Pelosi. She's the greatest legislator that's ever been. I know. Of course, obviously she is. But look, she knows how to get her people in line. And I know that's a lot of what Congress is about. But when I started to see how this was going down, I'm like, oh, Nancy's decided they're not going to win. And if she decides to make a move, she's got the power she can do it. She can do it. She could. And it had all the earmarks. There were no leaks. So I was hearing people saying, well, maybe there'll be an announcement Monday, Tuesday, I'm like, yeah, maybe. Maybe my Sunday, Monday, we'll have an announcement. I'm like, and I'm watching going, how are they going to get the delegates in line? I'm like, people, those phone calls are being made. There'll be no announcement until it's already hermetically sealed done. And that the convention is not going to be a problem. There's not going to be any open convention. There's not going to be they're doing the back room, smoke-filled room as you would have done in old movies. That's happening now. They're getting it done so that there's nothing to talk about because that's the way Nancy operates. And it's very competent. So I'm not here to be like, look, I got everything right. But because it's not about me getting it right. I thought it was going to happen. I thought it had to happen. I thought it gave them a chance. I thought it would turn polls around quickly. I was saying all that. And if you don't believe me, find me on Threads. You can read all my threads during the whole period of time. You can see exactly what I was saying. So I don't think, again, it's not that, gee, Dave, you were correct and you got it right. That's really not the point to me. The point to me is how many people who are professional people in this world got it wrong. How many news people got it wrong? Oh, I never would have seen that coming. You're not very good at what you do if you didn't see that coming or you didn't see how this was going down. There's several layers of media between what the event's going on and what I'm getting here in my crib. I could break the code on it. And there were plenty of people who did. And it was extraordinary to me. And then there was just the Kool-Aid drinker, part of any political party that believes that their person is a perfect person. Something else that I briefly want to point out is that there are, if you watch political conventions, and I don't advise you to do it that often, but those people are nuts. Those are the siloed people they're the Kool-Aid drinkers. They buy everything. At the Republican one, they were holding up signs, mass deportations. They were advertising their fascism. Hooray for the red, white, and blue. I mean, they were advertising. Isn't it great? I mean, and the Democrats, in a very real way, will be no better. They will, it's all going to be about their empathy and and it'll get to a point where you go, oh my God, guys. So, no, they don't represent anything terribly balanced, either event. And I guess neither event really can. I think it's a dark underside of politics, frankly. Conventions are awful. And so you go, wow, that's where, if you really take it to its extreme, that's where we go. Oh, I don't want to do that. And guess what? You don't want to do either. And again, I'm not centrist. But, wow. So then of course, it happens. And I've liked Harris for a long time. I have one Harris story. I've been watching Kamala Harris since she was California AG. I knew that she was a up-and-coming political human. In my family, there are lawyers, okay? I have a wife who used to do antitrust work. Her sister, my sister-in-law, is a partner at a big firm in the city. She's tough, very competent, and very tough, and very good at what she does. And she had to go to California to go, plead the case of her client, I suppose. See what negotiations she could pull off with California, state of California. So she met with the California AG. I saw her at a family event, and I was like, I guess you were out in California. And she said, yes. I said, what did you think of Kamala Harris? And this is a lady who doesn't, because she's good at what she does, she doesn't say anything she doesn't mean and that she's not absolutely sure of, right? You'd expect that. And she took a minute and gathered herself to make sure she said what she wanted to say accurately. And she was very careful, and then she said to me, formidable. She was like very tough, very knowledgeable, very smart. Nothing gets past her. Very bright person. And I was like, okay. And my wife dealt with that office as well, the California AG's office, while she was in charge of it, and said, they were tough. They were not easy. You knew that when you got an answer from them, that was the answer, and there wasn't going to be a lot of negotiating about it. So it was interesting to get that perspective. So I've been watching Kamala Harris for years, and in 2020 she was my candidate. Now, she didn't run a great campaign, and I think sometimes you've got to learn that new game. But she's a quick learner, so I was convinced that polls would start to turn. And polling is bad these days because, and that's fascinating, how there was a time, Nate Silver at one time picked 49 out of 50 states, and that's why the 538 became a thing. And for a while, it was the beginning of people talking about the algorithm and sort of predictive systems. And there were people who thought we could now know every election in advance. That was back in 2008. And obviously, things have changed a lot since then. Now we can't get the info. And increasingly, polls are inaccurate. So you're looking at polls, that they're a snapshot from maybe a week or 10 days before, and that they tend to be, these days, often getting it wrong. There was a red wave that was going to happen that never happened. They've been wrong a lot. So, but they can give you a general sense of a trend. Anything more specific about that, I think you're into trouble. But they could do that. And polls started to go. And you could see the trend line going in a particular direction. It's not done. There are folks, I'm sure, already saying, it's done. But Republicans didn't have, that convention was not great for them. The entire election is based on a very small group of the electorate in battleground states. Either the Democrats have to get them out, in which case they can win, or they have to be able to turn just a tiny amount, and that's the whole election. So, Democrats are in a good spot in that people don't hate her. People seem to like her. She's very well spoken. She doesn't have any of the baggage that Biden had. And the whole age issue now is gone. It's not just you'd remove the age issue from the Democrats. The age issue that was millstone, around now it's gone, and now it's on the other party. It's not just you removed it. Now you removed it and you transferred it to the other side. Now they've got to deal with age and those issues, which always was a fair thing to bring up. So there's that. They didn't get a big bump out of their convention. The Democrats now have movement. Now they've announced Walz as running mate, which is telling because they didn't pick Shapiro, and I don't think that We can go into that all day. But they think they're going to win Pennsylvania without putting Shapiro on the ticket. It says something about their internals. So they're feeling okay there. They didn't want to take senators from Arizona because then they might lose the seat down in the Senate. Democrats are talking, we're going to win. Yeah, you better win the Senate too. And the Senate map this year is awful. So you need a wave election. You got to take the House, you got to take the Senate, and you got to take the presidency, or you're still dealing with a rogue party that will derail everything because they are not playing straight and honest. And you've got a rogue Supreme Court. I expect that states like Georgia are going to turn. I think Nevada might not. I think they're going to get Michigan. I think they're going to get Wisconsin. I think they're going to get Pennsylvania. They might take North Carolina. This could go very strong for the Democrats because next they're going to have a convention. When they come out of the convention, they get convention bump. We're going to be into September. And people are going to have already started voting. That all goes very well for the Democrats. The thing, of course, is that, there's more to an election than just an election at stake. After the election, you have to win the post-election. Republicans will try to put it into the courts. They're going to try election now. And they've got the Supreme Court. So there are going to need to be state governors involved. There are going to need to be Department of Justice will probably need to be involved. I think the period after the election to the inauguration, like last time, is going to be an extremely dangerous period. I think we have to be ready for that. I think a lot of people are going, oh, it's 90-something days and it's over. No, not at all. You've got a rogue Supreme Court who will do anything. They've already have. They're happy to. They're looking for opportunities to do so. So you've got to watch out for that. And you've got to win the Senate and you've got to win the House. And let's assume, it's a big assumption, but let's say we can get to Inauguration Day. Let's say everything goes great for the Democrats. Democrats keep the Senate, they win the House, they win the presidency. And you go, boy, everything's great now, or we're safe now from the virulent fascism. No, you're not. Trump is gone now. We'll never hear from him again. No, it's not about Trump. It's about that movement. And that movement's there, and it's not going away. If you are to achieve power, once you have the power, you've got to push hard. You've got to push really, really, really hard. Do everything you can to just get them out of the courts, get them out of state legislatures. Make it so that way of thinking does not get you anywhere. And when people decide, oh, that doesn't win, they won't do it anymore. And that's how you sort of take the steam out of that movement and hopefully eliminate it. Anyway, so there you go. My advice to you is watch the news, okay? Watch the predictions that are being made and keep score. Who's getting it right? Repeatedly. Who's getting it wrong? A lot of people who I like, who I very much respect, especially legal people, talking about the Supreme Court, have gotten it wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong again. They didn't see that the sands had shifted underneath their feet. It doesn't make them dumb people. It just meant they couldn't adjust per se. I would, like I say, keep mental notes. Who's getting it right? Again, not all the time. No one's getting it right all the time, but most of the time. And follow what those folks are saying. And you know what? You're going to get good information. You're going to get much better information. I would also follow some of the social media, like a Threads or something like that, because you can get, if you're careful and you're parsing and you're really careful who you're following and who you're listening to, you can get some good information there and be a little ahead of it. And that's, I think, what anyone who's a news hound is trying to do. What's going to happen next? So that's where we are now. I expect there to be many twists and turns. I don't see this turning into a political blog vlog, but it's such a big deal these days. I think you kind of have to pay attention to it. So sorry for the long period of time that I was away, and sorry for the long video tonight, this afternoon, this morning, wherever you are. But I thought it was. I can't see how you can't talk about it. This is some major stuff that's going on, and kind of got to talk about it. So let me know what you think. Pardon me. I know it's volatile stuff. I know it's very hard for folks to talk about. I try not to get into fights with anybody. But what I try to do very, very much is to, we could disagree, but disagree with a degree of respect, assuming everyone's making a good faith argument. If you're making a good faith argument, then we could disagree because you're going to be a gentle human and I'm going to be a gentle human. So we'll simply say, oh, well, okay, I see it going more this way. Okay, well, all right, that's fine. You're going to, different perspectives are endemic, are going to happen and they're fine. Nothing wrong with that. Hashing all that out, that's fine. It doesn't have to turn into, personal stuff. It gets a little, that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to reestablish and uplift civilization every chance we get. That's what we want to do. So that's what I got for you guys. This time I won't be away for 2.5 months. I'm going to get my kid in school. I'm going to say go Orange a lot. And yeah, I just have to get past that. And dropping them off, it's going to suck. But once you're past it, it's going to be fine. But yeah, it's nothing, it's not about me. It's about him. He's going to have a good experience. It's time. He's ready. It's going to be all right. I will talk to you guys in a couple of weeks. Follow the news, follow the stuff, keep score. And who knows what we'll chat about in a couple of weeks. Maybe it'll be more about this sort of stuff. Maybe it'll be something else. But talk to you soon. Take care now.